Action research, goal setting, and student self-efficacy. My problem statement. There seems to be a lack of self-efficacy in some primary junior age students, leading to poor motivation to complete tasks. The absence of belief in oneself to complete a task and the confidence that they can complete a task well varies between students depending on the area of study. Statement of the research problem. I am first going to talk about my core values to help you better understand why I chose this particular research problem. My core values in relation to commitment to student learning. I believe students should be given the tools they need to succeed. I believe in students being engaged in their learning, and I want them to demonstrate a motivation to complete tasks to the best of their ability. I strive for students to feel comfortable and supported socially, emotionally, and academically. My core values related to ongoing professional learning. I have a consistent drive to improve student engagement and motivation. I take opportunities to better my own practice for the benefit of my students and own professional growth. Now, looking at the research problem, there is a lack of student self-efficacy in the classroom and how this is affecting student motivation to complete assigned tasks to the best of their ability. In the classrooms I have worked in, I have seen almost every student at some point exhibit signs of low self-efficacy. For example, students will say they cannot get a good grade on a math assignment because they are bad at math. With these statements came low motivation to complete tasks and a lack of ability to recognize how they could help themselves do better. I have looked through some different strategies that may have an impact on student self-efficacy, as well as strategies that align with my core values that are feasible for a classroom setting. Some of these strategies include greater inquiry opportunities for students, game-based learning, and goal setting. My research question. How can I implement weekly goal setting to increase student self-efficacy in the classroom? Before exploring my research further, there are some terms I want to define that will be relevant throughout the rest of this presentation. First, self-efficacy. This is an individual's belief in their innate ability to achieve goals. Goal setting. The process of identifying something you want to accomplish and establishing measurable goals and timeframes. SMART goals. Goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. Objectives that will provide you with a direct path to achieve success. And finally, I want to clarify the difference between self-esteem and self-efficacy, as the two are often confused. Self-esteem is focused more on being. For example, feeling that you are perfectly acceptable as you are. Whereas self-efficacy is more focused on doing. For example, feeling that you are up to a challenge or capable of doing something. High self-worth can definitely improve one's sense of self-efficacy, just as high self-efficacy can contribute to one's sense of overall value or worth, but the two stand as separate constructs. Literature summary. I am now going to discuss some of the research that has been conducted to date regarding student self-efficacy and goal setting. To review, my action research question is how can I implement weekly goal setting to increase student self-efficacy in the classroom? This was driven by a concerning problem that I saw in many students, with the problem being that they believed they did not have what it took to complete a particular task. Some of the research I looked through proposed enhancing student self-efficacy through providing mastery experiences, teacher reinforcement, goal setting, and tracking personal progress. Ye and Lin in 2018 discussed in their article that one of the best ways to increase self-efficacy in students was to give them opportunities to experience successful performance through mastery. In their study, they looked at how game-based learning could promote these kinds of opportunities, as games are designed to have players practice particular skills they struggle with before allowing them to move on. Thinking about this information, along with other ideas presented about goal setting, tracking progress, and teacher reinforcement, I knew I could bridge my personal interest on the impacts of goal setting with the problem of how to increase student self-efficacy. One of the common themes in the research was the importance of goals being attainable and relevant to students themselves. This is also consistent with the large number of findings on the importance of student goals being SMART goals. Much of the research discussed how when creating goals with your students, it is critical they follow the SMART goal criteria, otherwise students can easily set themselves up for failure. Many of the articles I read focused specifically on the relationship between goal setting and improved self-efficacy for math or for writing. Reading the findings in these articles was helpful when thinking about what successful goal achievement would look like for my students who need to improve their self-efficacy in these subject areas, but still left me wondering about students who struggle with self-efficacy elsewhere. Another finding that stood out to me in the research was the importance of self-reflection through goal setting and how it can be a critical piece toward improved self-efficacy. If goal setting is done on its own, it might not have the same impact that it could when done with consistent self-reflection. It is the self-reflection while going through the goal setting process that allows students to celebrate the small successes in their learning. This finding was also consistent with what Ye and Lin discussed in their article regarding the need for students to experience successful performance in order to grow their self-efficacy. These findings together are well related to my guiding problem, as they give possible reasons as to why some students have such low self-efficacy in the first place. Possibly the fact that students never see themselves doing well in math, for example, leads to their belief that they are incapable of succeeding at math. We could also infer that without self-reflection, students may be missing out on opportunities to brainstorm ideas of how they can help themselves improve. Putting goal setting and regular self-reflection together may help students to reflect on the effectiveness of the action plan they have in place to achieve their goals, therefore allowing them to self-discover what they can do to help themselves improve. The suggestion to create SMART goals specific to each student and having students reflect on their goals on a regular basis may help students to see themselves achieving, even when that achievement is only the small steps that arise when working towards an end goal. One of the things that I found difficult to locate in my literature search was research regarding the impact of goal setting on improving self-efficacy with primary age students. Many of the findings I focused on looked at students in grades 4 to 6. I would love to use my own research to later explore how I can apply strategies presented in these articles, such as self-reflection, teacher feedback, and the creation of specific SMART goals, to both primary and junior age students. My research action plan. Data sources. I am first going to discuss the qualitative data sources that I will use in my action research. The first qualitative source is semi-structured interviews. In the interviews, I can ask some guiding questions while still allowing for student feedback and conversation. This style of data collection will also allow me to revise questions based on the conversation and ask follow-up questions based on student answers. This format will be similar to conferences that students have with teachers on a regular basis, therefore provide a natural and comfortable process for students to engage in, hopefully making the data collected more honest and valid. The interviews would also be particularly important for students who struggle to put their ideas and thoughts on paper. The next source of qualitative data are student self-reflection journals. These will allow me to better understand the student thought process, which will be critical for evaluating their perceived self-efficacy. Looking at their self-reflections throughout the goal-setting process will also help to guide some of the questions I may want to ask or dig deeper into when conducting the semi-structured interviews. The journals may also uncover more raw data that the students may not feel comfortable sharing during a face-to-face conversation. My final piece of qualitative data is anecdotal notes. I will use these notes during observations of students during various work periods throughout different times of the day. These notes can also be used as a guide for the questions I want to ask when conducting the semi-structured interviews. My final data source is a rating scale, which is a type of quantitative data. I will use the rating scale with students before, during, and after the action research process has been carried out. It will provide quantitative data on how students feel about their ability to complete certain tasks. And completion of the rating scale before the goal setting process may also help students to pinpoint a direction that they want to take with their goal. Triangulation, validity, and reliability. As mentioned, I intend to use semi-structured interviews, self-reflection journals, anecdotal notes, and a rating scale to collect data. Using these 4 different kinds of data will ensure triangulation as well as make use of both qualitative and quantitative data. While collecting data, I will ensure validity and reliability by using a rating scale that effectively assesses students' attitudes and self-efficacy towards various subject areas and academic activities. Bandora's multidimensional scales of perceived self-efficacy has various scales that can be used for students to rate themselves on, depending on the focus of the researcher. I would ensure that all students were given the same rating scale at the same time, and that it was accessible to all students to complete independently. To ensure reliability and validity during the interview process, I will be sure to conduct all of the interviews in the same style and ask each student the same set of questions. I would also be careful in the development of the questions as I want to ensure they are valid, therefore directly related to the goal-setting process and student self-efficacy. For reflection journals, I would ensure to give each student the same journal prompt. This will help to guide their reflections, ensuring they are related to the focus of the action research question. I would also ensure that each student would have what they needed to complete the journal, so there are no restrictions to what they can write. When completing anecdotal notes, I would create a focused observation guide so that I can ensure I am always looking for the same things when observing various students throughout the day. These notes would include a checklist of various attitudes and behaviors towards various activities, which would help me to ensure validity of the notes and reliability between students. Participants and setting. The participants who will provide data for my research are students in one grade 4 class, roughly 25 students. The data will be collected by the classroom teacher in the student's regular classroom. Ethical considerations. I would first obtain ethics approval from the district school board and school principal. In order to ensure the privacy and confidentiality of my participants, I would have them and their parents complete a consent form, which would outline the nature of the study, the purpose, and the various forms of data collection the students would be directly a part of, ensuring them their name would never be printed in paper, and explain that other staff in the school may become aware of the class involvement. While collecting data, I would ensure that students' names are removed and replaced with numbers or pseudonyms. I would make sure to let students know that any information they provide in their interviews, rating scales, and reflection journals would remain anonymous. I would also be sure to give participants and their parents the opportunity to ask questions about the research at any time. Timeline chart, data collection process. As mentioned, I will be using 4 different types of data collection. Anecdotal notes will be collected bi-weekly, captured weekly from September to December. Student self-reflection journals will be completed weekly by students and collected at the end of each week from September to December. Semi-structured interviews will be completed at the end of each month from September to December, and the rating scale will be completed at the end of each month and collected monthly from September to December. Data analysis. For the rating scales, I would analyze the data by keeping an Excel file of students' rating scale results that are recorded each month and use SPSS for data analysis. For the student reflection journals, I would create a rubric for evidence of self-efficacy in student self-reflection journals and use it to assess students' attitudes of self-efficacy throughout the research period. I would record grade from self-efficacy rubrics in an Excel file and attach code words as labels to describe meaningful ideas related to self-efficacy and goal setting, and use these terms in the created rubric. For interviews and anecdotal notes, I would review recordings and notes from student interviews and code the interview transcripts to develop main themes around self-efficacy and goal setting. Again, I would enter all data into an Excel file in order to help me track and look for trends. Closure. Designing this action research study would support my knowledge of teaching and influence my teaching practice, as it would help me to better understand how to help students gain greater self-efficacy. Students with low self-efficacy are the students who never take risks, never try anything new, and usually find themselves discouraged or frustrated with school. If I can find a way to help these students realize their own potential and see that they do in fact have what it takes to be successful, I will feel as though I am truly doing my job as their teacher. After designing this study, I would feel confident that I could effectively implement goal setting into the classroom using the SMART goal criteria, and through this process would help my students to begin believing in themselves and take some control over their own learning. Literature annotated bibliography. There were 5 separate academic journal articles that helped to inform my action research plan. The first, Enhancing Self-Efficacy of Elementary School Students to Learn Mathematics, discussed qualitative research aimed at educators looking at the role of self-efficacy in grade 6 students' ability to learn math. In the findings, the researchers concluded that in order to help students grow their self-efficacy, the experience of self-reflection played an extremely important role. They also concluded that teacher reinforcement throughout the goal-setting process was an important factor in growing students' self-efficacy. The second, self-improvement through goal setting. The authors argue in this article that goal setting is often used as a tool for teaching students the importance of lifelong learning, which fits well with my research question. The article also discusses how to introduce goal setting into the classroom, specifically looking at how to create SMART goals with students. The authors concluded that through the goal setting process, students not only achieve better academically, but also gain valuable problem-solving skills and improve self-esteem. The third, can process portfolios affect students' writing self-efficacy? In this study, researchers found that using portfolios to track progress while essay writing resulted in increased self-efficacy of the students. The authors also discussed how self-efficacy is related to progress portfolios, which helped me to further understand the potential relationship between specific goal setting and self-efficacy. The fourth, Goal Setting for Students and Teachers, 6 Steps to Success. This article examined the impact of goal setting on students' ability to develop a sense of control towards their own success. The article was directed at teachers, providing steps that the authors found effective when introducing SMART goals into their own classrooms. They also explained that having each child create an individual goal that is specific to them can help provide classroom teachers with a direction for the successful instruction of curriculum content. And finally, achievement goals influence mastery experience via 2 paths in digital creativity games among elementary school students. The researchers in this article were interested in how player-related factors may influence the learning outcomes of digital creativity games. The authors discussed recent findings that found self-efficacy to improve through game-based learning, as it is enhanced by successful performance. The researchers concluded that motivation for achieving goals was crucial for enhancing self-efficacy, as they saw digital games stimulate intrinsic motivation by providing an individually created balance of challenge and skill. Thank you. I hope this presentation has inspired you to see the importance of students having high self-efficacy and how it will hopefully be enhanced through the goal setting and reflecting process.